Stop fighting them. This is how God deals with those who hurt you when you stay silent. Have you ever wondered why the people who hurt you seem to be doing just fine? They lied. They betrayed your trust. They walked away without looking back. Yet somehow, their lives seem unchanged, and you're left carrying the pain. Why do the people who hurt me seem to be thriving? That question pushes you to search for answers and wonder where God's justice is in all of this. Do you believe in divine justice? Sometimes pain makes it hard to hold on to your faith. You pray, looking for peace, but the silence leaves you uncertain. And yet, it's in those moments of doubt that the opportunity for growth is hidden. Together, let's discover how faith can offer you a path to healing, even in the middle of pain. Your journey toward inner peace begins here, in the simplicity of shared moments. Let's step into the first truth, the temptation of revenge and faith in divine justice. Maybe someone lied about you. Maybe they twisted your words. Maybe they walked away without ever giving you the chance to explain. And the hardest part is not what they did. It's watching them continue their life as if nothing happened. Most people would want to strike back against injustice or manipulation. Some people choose revenge. Others try to prove they're better than the people who hurt them. But both reactions can quietly feed bitterness. Because deep down, you know you've given up something essential. It's easy to answer injustice with more injustice. Yet Christian truth invites you to trust God for justice without turning to revenge. It calls you to believe that it isn't your immediate action that restores balance, but your faithfulness to what's right. We read in Luke 12:15, "A man's life, even in abundance, doesn't depend on what he possesses." In other words, your worth isn't measured by what you gain or lose externally, but by your inner integrity. Instead of following your impulse or your anger in the face of apparent injustice, choose distance and prayer before acting. Take a day before responding. Step away from the emotion. Pray before you react. Take a deep breath, revisit your values, and ask God, not what you want to gain, but how to remain upright. When injustice strikes, keep these thoughts in mind. Choose to let go rather than retaliate. You don't have to take revenge. Let God act. May my faith be stronger than my anger. I place myself in divine justice. This is an opportunity to grow in peace. As Romans reminds us, don't be overcome by evil, but overcome evil with good. That means every time you refuse to feed conflict or resentment, you're already taking part in that victory of good over evil. Faith replaces revenge. Every time you refuse to seek immediate payback, you strengthen your character and protect your peace. You bring justice without violence, and you keep your soul free before God. Let's approach the second truth, when suffering becomes a test of trust. Someone you trusted disappointed you. You expected loyalty. You expected honesty. Instead, you found yourself dealing with silence, rejection, or betrayal. The natural reaction is to replay the hurt again and again, to dwell on the betrayal, to imagine what you should have said or done differently. But that doesn't help, because the anger takes more energy than it gives back, and your inner peace slips a little farther away. Suffering can often seem unfair and heavy. Yet faith invites you to see it as an opportunity to learn how to wait without losing control. Christian truth teaches that patience builds trust, even through life's smaller frustrations. Ephesians 4:26 expresses it this way: "If you're angry, don't sin. Don't let the sun go down while you're still angry." In other words, it isn't about suppressing your anger. It's about not letting it control your actions or your words. On another day, someone close to you rejects you because of your faith. Those words hurt more than you'd like to admit, especially when they come from someone you love. The silence that follows feels heavy, like a new distance has appeared between you. Once again, that pain tests your trust more than it measures your courage. When your trust begins to shake because of pain, instead of responding with contempt or withdrawal, take a step toward listening and inner forgiveness. Acknowledge the wound without feeding resentment. Bring that struggle to God in prayer instead of turning it into another conflict. Your faithfulness matters more than your pride. Here are some thoughts to support you during the trial. Stay calm, even when it's difficult. Thank you for the strength to keep going. I trust despite the pain. My heart is strong through this trial. May this suffering draw me closer to Him. As Colossians reminds us, bear with one another and forgive one another if any of you has a grievance against someone. Simply put, forgiveness doesn't erase what you've suffered. It simply puts God back at the center of a broken relationship. That's what's happening when you choose patience over instinctive reaction. You learn to entrust to Christ what you can't control on your own. Patience builds trust, and that's where a strong and lasting faith begins in the middle of everyday wounds. Let's look at the third truth: finding light in the heart of injustice. You've been serving others for a long time. You give your time, your energy, and your attention, yet no one thanks you. The days pass, faces change, but recognition never comes. Sometimes you feel that quiet exhaustion weighing heavily on your shoulders. The usual reaction is to withdraw or to serve reluctantly. You tell yourself that your dedication means nothing if nobody notices it. But that expectation of visible recognition only leaves you even more exhausted. It's tempting to seek approval from others, but faith calls you to see things differently, to find inner light even when others don't see it. This Christian truth teaches that your value doesn't depend on the recognition you receive, but on the love you give. St. Paul writes in Philippians 4:11-12, "I've learned to be content in every situation I find myself in. I know how to live in poverty and how to live in abundance." In other words, you learn to serve with joy, even when no one's watching. The distant ringing of a bell in the valley marks the end of a time of prayer during your spiritual retreat. By the second day, you feel like running away from yourself. The silence confronts you with your limitations and your impatience, as if serving God without visible activity were a waste of time. When injustice seems to prevail, you need to look for the light. Instead of dwelling on what's missing, choose a quiet act of kindness. Smile at the person who ignores you, or pray for the person who hurt you. Perform one act of kindness without expecting anything in return. That's where genuine love begins. These thoughts can guide you toward that light. Look for the light within yourself. My service isn't in vain. May my faithfulness be my reward. I shine even in silence. Today I'll serve without expecting anything in return. As Matthew 6:34 reminds us, so don't worry about tomorrow, because tomorrow will worry about itself. Each day has enough trouble of its own. Trust the present moment. Not every act of faithfulness needs immediate recognition. That's what's happening when you choose to love despite ingratitude. Your service becomes free and genuine. True light shines from within, and that's the light you learn to nurture every day. Let's explore the fourth truth, transforming pain into spiritual growth. The sound of distant car horns fades away. You're focused behind the wheel when another driver aggressively honks at you for a mistake you didn't make. His face is tense, his hand raised in frustration. Everything inside you tightens. Anger rises, even though you know you did nothing wrong. Your first instinct might be to respond with a gesture or a harsh word to restore what you believe is justice in that moment. But that only feeds the inner turmoil. The tension remains, and you're the one who stays trapped in that agitation long after the other driver is gone. The pain you feel in the face of injustice can be deeply transformative. It confronts your wounded pride and invites you to choose between reaction and self-control. Transforming pain through humility and patience then becomes a path to inner freedom. The Gospel of John expresses it this way: "Let the one among you who is without sin be the first to throw a stone." In other words, instead of immediately condemning the person who offends you, recognize that you too can hurt others without meaning to. That realization opens the door to peace rather than resentment. A family conflict has lasted for years, and no one is willing to give in. Meals become silent or tense. Every word carries weight. Everyone believes they're right, yet no one truly heals. In this frozen atmosphere, the pain remains because nobody wants to take the first step of humility. When pain persists, it becomes a tool for transformation. Instead of trying to prove you're right, choose silence before any impulsive response. Before you react, take time to pray. Take a breath. Let the storm inside you settle before you speak. It's this deliberate pause that transforms experienced injustice into an opportunity for personal and spiritual growth. Let's reflect on these thoughts that help us grow through trials. Stay calm in the face of adversity. You grow through every pain. May this trial lift me higher. I choose patience over reaction. This is an opportunity to mature. As 1 Thessalonians reminds us, always be joyful. Pray continually. Give thanks in all circumstances. Simply put, maintaining gratitude even in the middle of injustice helps your soul remain free and confident. Pain can become a lesson. That's what's happening when you choose not to react immediately. You move from instinct to wisdom. And every time you refuse to feed your anger, your faith grows in genuine maturity. Let's move on to the fifth truth: letting God handle the injustices in our lives. For the seventh time, you forgive the same person, and this time feels harder than the 6 before it. You think about everything they've said to you, about those apologies that sound empty. Your heart tightens, torn between weariness and the desire to move on. The immediate temptation is to close your heart so you won't suffer anymore. You tell yourself that forgiving again would only allow yourself to be walked on once more. But that reaction doesn't bring you peace. It keeps you trapped in an inner tension where bitterness continues to grow. It's tempting to want control over every injustice we experience. Yet faith invites you to trust God with what lies beyond your control. Matthew 5:5 expresses it this way: "Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth." In other words, the person who refuses to strike back doesn't lose anything. They allow God to bring justice at the right time and keep their heart intact. The distant ringing of bells accompanies your walk through the park. You realize you haven't given thanks for anything in a long time. Even in your prayers, everything revolves around what has hurt you. Yet all around you there are still simple signs of goodness: a ray of sunlight, a smile exchanged with a stranger. When letting go allows you to discover peace, instead of replaying what was done to you, choose one specific reason for gratitude every day. Every time a painful memory returns, thank God for one thing that's still good in your life. That habit redirects your focus and prevents the injustice you've suffered from defining your entire day. When you're struggling, these thoughts can help. Let go of what's beyond your control. Thank you for the small victories. May God take over from here. I don't have to carry everything alone. Your forgiveness is a gift. As Ephesians 4:32 reminds us, be kind and compassionate to one another. Forgive one another, just as God forgave you in Christ. Your forgiveness becomes part of Christ's forgiveness at work within you. You are no longer carrying the burden alone. That's what's happening when you learn to entrust to God what weighs heavily on you. You aren't giving up your dignity. You're reclaiming your inner freedom in the face of injustice. It's through this attitude that the true gentleness spoken of in the gospel begins to grow. Let's discover the sixth truth: forgiveness as the path to freedom. Someone asks you to forgive a serious offense that you still haven't gotten over. The words they spoke wounded you deeply, and the pain remains fresh. You still feel that weight in your chest whenever you think about it. Everything seems stuck, as if granting forgiveness would mean denying the pain you've suffered. The usual reaction is to keep your distance or reject the idea of forgiveness until the other person knows how to apologize properly. You think you're protecting yourself that way, but in reality, you're only extending your own suffering. Your heart remains closed, trapped by something it believes it can control. When we're hurt, forgiveness can seem impossible. Yet Christian faith teaches that forgiveness is, above all, an act that sets free the one who gives it. Matthew 7:12 expresses it this way: "Whatever you want others to do for you, do the same for them." In other words, if you want to be understood and lifted up when you make mistakes, begin by offering that same understanding to the person who hurt you. Forgiveness sets the heart free. The creaking of a door hinge echoes through the house when your teenage child slams the door in your face after a comment you believed was harmless. In that moment, you feel a cold anger rising, mixed with a sense of injustice. That abrupt gesture hurts you more than it should because it touches both your love and your authority at the same time. Forgiveness is a path to freedom. Instead of dwelling on that lack of respect or waiting for them to come and apologize on their own, choose to calm your heart before speaking. Before speaking to them, take a moment to pray. Be honest about your own mistakes if you've made any. Then reopen the conversation without accusation. That act of openness breaks the cycle of resentment. These thoughts can guide you toward forgiveness. Forgive so you can be free. My heart heals through forgiveness. May this resentment leave me. It's time to let go of this pain. I choose to forgive for my own sake. As Matthew 7:1 reminds us, don't judge so that you won't be judged. For you'll be judged by the same standard you use to judge others, and you'll be measured by the same measure you use. Forgiveness doesn't require a perfect apology. Sometimes it begins the moment you decide to stop carrying the weight of the offense. That's what's happening when you forgive. You aren't denying the offense. You're simply refusing to let it control your inner peace. Forgiveness sets the heart free. That's something you can begin experiencing right now. Let's look at the seventh truth: inner peace through trust in God's justice. Sometimes the people who hurt you never apologize. They move on. They act as though nothing happened. And that can feel deeply unfair. But that agitation only adds inner turmoil to the noise around you. The heart becomes exhausted when it tries to enforce justice on its own. Christian faith invites a different response. Let God be the judge and the keeper of balance. Trusting God to restore balance can bring peace to our hearts. We read in James 1:19, everyone should be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to become angry. In other words, the person who learns to listen before acting maintains control of their spirit and creates space for God to work through His justice. Another situation arises when you need to tell a painful but necessary truth to someone you love. You know your words may hurt them, but you also know that lies or silence would be worse. In moments like these, tension can rise quickly. You want to be fair, but you're afraid of being unfair in the way you speak. Peace comes when you let God judge. Instead of trying to balance everything yourself, entrust the consequences to Him and focus on speaking with honesty and kindness. Speak the truth with kindness and respect, then leave the outcome in God's hands. Peace comes through trust in God. Keep these thoughts close to your heart. Breathe and trust. My peace is worth more than this conflict. May God be my judge. I choose peace despite the noise. Let God take care of it. As 1 Corinthians 13 reminds us, love is patient. Love is kind. It doesn't envy. It doesn't boast. It isn't proud. It does nothing inappropriate. It doesn't seek its own advantage. It doesn't become easily angered. It keeps no record of wrongs. Every time you release the need to enforce your own version of justice, you make room for love, peace, and trust to grow. That's what's happening when you choose trust over anger. Your heart finds calm because it allows God to judge in His own way and in His own time. Throughout this reflection, we've seen how the human heart is often caught between the desire for revenge and the call to inner peace. By choosing to trust God's justice rather than our own impulses, we discover a new kind of freedom, the freedom of no longer being a slave to resentment. It's in that surrender that true transformation takes place, where forgiveness becomes an act of faith and suffering becomes fertile ground for spiritual growth. Yes, even injustice can become a test of trust that reveals the depth of our relationship with God. Today, this truth stands before us clearly. The people who hurt you may never apologize. They may never admit what they did. They may never understand the damage they caused. But your healing was never supposed to depend on their understanding. It depends on your willingness to place the situation in God's hands. Human justice can fail, but God's justice remains perfect and silent. When we learn to see our wounds not as punishments, but as invitations to transform suffering into wisdom, our perspective begins to change. As St. Augustine once said, God judges better through time than man does in a single moment. That perspective brings peace to our hearts and reminds us that every trial carries a hidden purpose, often greater than our immediate understanding. So if this meditation has helped you find a little peace or encouraged you to place your burden into the Lord's hands, I invite you to join the Christian Wisdom community. Subscribe to continue this journey of faith with us. Share this video to bring comfort to someone who's going through injustice. And let us know in the comments how God has taught you to trust Him during your own seasons of trial. Together, let's build a living faith that chooses light over revenge. Remember this: when everything seems lost and the silence of heaven feels heavy upon you, it isn't God's absence. More often than not, it's the beginning of His justice at work. Subscribe to our channel, leave a like, and stay connected for more messages of faith, hope, peace, and God's guidance. May God's love, peace, and blessings always be with you. And remember, God is always with you.